All right, I want to continue. I've been doing a series, God's Love for Our Cities. Have you been blessed? Those of you who have been listening have been blessed by this, I hope. And just, if you haven't been here, I would encourage you to go back. It'll be part 4. I firmly am convinced that God has a deep love for cities because He loves us deeply. You believe that, right? And so because of His great love for us, He loves humanity. And so cities are places of such concentration of humanity. We shouldn't be surprised that God has a great love for cities. And so I'm hoping by sharing some of this from a biblical perspective that we would see that rather than maybe speak words of negativity, right, over our cities, we'd begin to speak words of blessing and life over our cities. That, sure, it's easy to call out pockets of behavior or situations that we see that are maybe anti-biblical or against biblical values or areas that we're concerned about. I understand that. I have those concerns too. But if we come at it in an opposite spirit and release kingdom words and what God's heart is over the situation, I believe we can begin to see some things change, right? And so that's sort of where I'm coming at for this, because I really do believe we're in a moment of opportunity here. And so as I mentioned last week, I believe this is an important series. And the crisis that we've all come through, and we're just coming out of it, right? These last 18, I guess going on 19, 20 months, it's an opportunity disguised if we have faith to see it. And so right now our world is searching for answers, and we have them because of our life in Christ. Do you believe that? Now, it's a psychological principle that those with the most hope have the most influence. And so I want to challenge us today. Are you a person of hope? Are you a person of pessimism? Are you negative? Right? Sometimes folks are just naturally inclined to be negative about everything. Maybe you've worked with someone like that, right? And so we want to help everyone, certainly in the culture of the church, to realize we should be the people with the most hope anywhere, right? In every generation. Listen, every generation since the dawn of humanity, and certainly since Jesus came to earth and the church was birthed, has faced difficult times and seasons. You just look through history and church history, you see that. But even during suffering, wars, pandemics, economic hardship, natural disasters, hopelessness, the church shines bright through Jesus' love and His presence. We are the light of the world, right? Jesus was and is the light of the world. He said now we are the light of the world. And if we hold on to that and we stay resolute gazing into His eyes, then we can be people of influence with this message of hope, right? That's what the world longs for. Some of the reason many in society don't want anything to do with the church or organized religion is they don't see us as people of hope. They see us as people of negativity and judgment. Instead of being ones that would say, okay, listen, I know maybe you've had some mistakes in your life, but God has an amazing plan, right? And so this plan began with Jesus coming to earth, walking amongst us, God in human flesh, dying on a cross, rising from the dead, and He's seated on high and He's coming again. And in that time that we are in before He returns, we're going to love you, we're going to help you, we're not going to ostracize you, we're not going to push you to the margins of society or certainly in the church. We're going to embrace you and help you find wholeness in Christ. I'm not saying that we ignore biblical values. No, the Bible is the Bible. We're going to stand on that. But we don't come at folks with an eye of judgment. We come at them with an eye of restoration and hope, right? That's what He's after. So we live from Him as believers in Christ, and our new life is in Him. We are citizens of heaven while living on earth. God loves us, and He loves this planet. That's why Christ came and died to give man hope and a restoration. We have an inheritance, church, that will not fade, it will not diminish, or be taken from us. We have been sealed with the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is our guarantee, our down payment, the earnest money of this eternal inheritance that we have. This is good news. This is the hope that we carry. So no force in heaven or on earth can take that from us, period. We can go through the valley of the shadow of death. And by the way, I hope you're just passing through. And it's just a shadow, right? Death has been defeated through Christ and His resurrection, right? And so it doesn't matter what happens to us in this life. It doesn't matter if we should fall into persecution or worse, maybe someday in prison for our faith or whatever that may be, and it is happening around the world in this hour. We can still keep marching on, full of faith, full of hope, full of optimism, and be a bastion of light in this world. Amen. That's what God's calling us to. And so if you've been in the doldrums and the ho-hums and the negativity thing, you need to break that cycle. Amen. Ask God for a fresh touch. Ask God, listen, do I have belief systems and patterns that I'm holding on to that are maybe keeping me stuck instead of having a positive view on life instead of a negative view? That's a whole other sermon. But listen, God is a God of hope. Everybody say hope. Hope. Paul would write, he says, now abides these: faith, hope, and love. They don't ever diminish. Now, I mentioned a key verse here in this series. I want to come back to it. Jeremiah 29, verses 4 through 7. Children of Israel and both the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom of Judah, they've been warned for centuries of their apostasy and falling away from God, and eventually the prophets declare that they'll be carried away as exiles to Babylon. It happens for 70 years. In the midst of that exile, God gives them this message of hope. He said, this is what the Lord of heaven's armies, the God of Israel, says to all the captives He has exiled to Babylon from Jerusalem. Build homes and plan to stay. Plant gardens and eat the food they produce. Marry and have children, then find spouses for them so that you may have many grandchildren. Multiply, do not dwindle away or be diminished, and work for the peace and prosperity of the city where I sent you into exile. Now, you may not like Tucson. You may even wonder how you got here. But I can guarantee you it wasn't as bad as being sent off as a captive, as a slave into Babylon. Are you with me? And yet in the midst of that, God is saying, work for the peace and prosperity of the city where I sent you in exile. Then He says this, pray to the Lord for it, for its welfare will determine your welfare. Or another translation of that is peace. For its peace will determine your peace. So think about this. They're led away captive, and they're to bless their enemies. Sounds like Jesus, right? Bless those who persecute you. Pray for those who despitefully use you. Then He goes on to say, pray for the city, seek its well-being, and you're to live your lives there, and you're to want its peace, to want its prosperity. Oh, this may astound you, church here in Tucson. You're to pray even for the wicked to be prosperous. Whoa, wait a minute. I don't want to see the drug dealers prosperous, but I want to see them blessed in such a way that they'd say, wait a minute, God's done this, because nothing else I could have done it. Amen. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? All of a sudden, if people start getting a realization of the goodness of God and the mercy of God, even in the midst of their wrong behavior, all of a sudden folks are going to begin to say, wait a minute, I don't know what it is about you folks that call yourselves Christian, but I want what you have. Amen. And it's not negativity. Amen. It's joy, peace. It's just flowing and living our life in Him, where we're just effervescent flow of the river of God flowing out of us. If you want to see your family, your church, your city transformed, you must make a commitment to this community, to the land and region. You've got to love this place. Wait, Pastor, I'm just passing through. Okay, bless it while you're here. If you're watching online from another city, bless the city you're in. Sometimes God does put us in places for temporary assignments. That does happen. Sometimes folks are in the military, they get assigned someplace, or maybe it's a, whatever type of job, or just a season, right? That's true. But while you're there, be a blessing. Bless the city. Speak life over it. Don't curse it. Speak health and prosperity. And so it's sort of like a marriage relationship. There's absolutely no substitute for commitment. You're either all in or you're not, right? You've got to be all in. And so, again, as I shared here, you may not own property in Tucson. in a sense of the land, but the Lord is expecting you to take spiritual ownership of this city while you're here, for whatever time that is. To love this city, to cherish the people. That's God's desire. And I shared two principles that happen of obeying this. The blessing of increase, Jeremiah 29:6, be increased there and not diminished. Choosing to set yourself firmly in a place where God has called you releases the blessing of increase. If you want to be more prosperous and full of God's peace and joy and abundance, then bless the city, bless the people of the city. Speak life over this place, right? A second blessing that comes is this blessing of peace. We're to seek the peace of the city, Jeremiah 29:7. For in its peace or welfare you will have peace. There is a spiritual peace that every city needs. Deciding to seek the peace of the city you live in settles something in your heart. I heard another statistic the other day. I think we reached 79 homicides in the city. We've tied it now for the most homicides in a year, and the year's not even done yet. I submit to you. I adjure you. I'm asking you, pray for the peace of this city. Speak life over this city. I see it as the enemy is trying to stir things up because he knows that God is about to do something in this place. And not just this city, but in cities all over the world in this hour. Murder rates are all up over the place. Hopelessness is up. Opioid, overdoses, all this stuff, right? But God is about to have a mighty sweeping move of the Spirit. I'm convinced of it. So we need to go after His heart for this city and say, okay, we're going to pour, we're going to pray, we're going to labor, we're going to cry out day and night until we see heaven move in and pockets of hopelessness are eradicated, until we see whole families being touched by the power of God. So we see kids and youth all of a sudden exciting and school systems touched by the power and the presence of God. Workplaces all of a sudden become a place of evangelism. Not out of force, because people are so hungry for the presence of God. You see, there's long-term results of commitment. God will grant expectations for a future and a hope. Again, in the midst of this captivity, the children of Israel promised in Jeremiah 29:11, and you know this verse. For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. They are plans for good and not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope. In those days when you pray, I will listen. In what days? When you're carried away captive. When it looks like you've failed me so miserable that the consequences of your sin have now led you far from me, even physically from the place of the city that I love, Jerusalem, right? And God says, when you pray, I will listen in that moment. Oh, church, hear the voice of the Lord in this hour. He is saying, I will listen to you like never before. God has never stopped listening, not for the shortest moment. He has never lost control of planet Earth through whatever travesty we've seen in human history. God has always been in charge, and the answer is always Jesus Christ. He is the hope of mankind. He goes on to say, if you look for me wholeheartedly, you will find me. Is it possible we've not been looking with all of our hearts for the Lord? You see, an undivided heart brings God's peace and wholeness. If we're struggling with constant strife in our life and chaos and economic hard times and all types of stuff are going on, we've got to ask ourselves, is our heart fully centered on the Lord? Am I in that place with Him that I'm so surrendered to Him that He is nothing else? We sang about it today. He is my everything. He is the one I desire. He's the one on which I lay my life on every day on the altar because I want Him. Hunger for Him. His promises for the future build faith and hope. They will come to pass. Do you believe that God has promises for you, for your family, for our churches, for our cities in this hour that He wants to bring to pass? For our nation, for the nations of the world. If He would do this for Israel that went apostate, how much more will He do it for us in this new covenant age? Amen. God is not looking to judge the world, but through Christ deliver the world and reconcile the world unto himself. Paul writes about this in 2 Corinthians 5. That's God's heart. God's heart is reconciliation, wholeness, to make all things new. So when we make a commitment to where God has placed us, vision and purpose begin to unfold. We begin to bloom where we're planted. All of a sudden, that which looks hopeless begins to look filled with hope and optimism. Now, I challenge you in this season, ask God for a vision for your community. God will grant expectations for a future and hope. You will begin to see your community in a new way. He'll give you fresh vision. You will pray from a place of faith with expectation and hope for its future. You'll begin to have a personal revelation which will lead you to personal revival, which then begins to impact your life, your family, and those around you. All of a sudden, we become diffusers of hope and a fragrance of His love, right? Years ago, I was praying. It was right after we came to the city, and God began to challenge us to plant a church here. I'm praying one day, and it just seemed overwhelming. Planting a church. We had no church organization back east that sent us. We had no large missions organization. We had no one write a big check and give it to us or anything. We came, and quite frankly, we weren't even sure why we were here at first. And God said, I brought you here. I want you, this is your new mission field. I've shared that, and He said, I want you to establish a church here. And that was a huge step for us. It was a huge step of commitment, financially, every way. But we knew it was the Lord. And one day while I was praying, and we were going through a little bit of a tough time, and I was praying one day, and all of a sudden the Lord began to give me a vision. I saw this city, I saw this valley. And all of a sudden, in this vision, I saw this beautiful silver platter. And this big silver cover. It's like you have a big turkey or something, right? You have this big silver platter on top of this, or cover on top of this silver platter. And I saw the Lord Himself, and He hands me this silver platter with this big silver cover on top of it. And He goes, take the cover off. And I take the cover off, and I see the city of Tucson in the valley. I'm like, God, what? He says, I'm letting you help steward over this city for a season. I'm not the only one. He was just speaking to me personally. You have, for this time that you're here, you get to participate in helping in this process. And then all of a sudden I saw a table long and narrow, but you couldn't see the end of it. It went to eternity. It was the marriage supper of the Lamb. Christ Himself, and it was so ordained so beautifully, and beautiful silverware and plates and goblets and candles, and it was so gorgeous, and the tablecloth. And I said, Lord, and you saw humanity and those that had their robes washed in the blood of the Lamb. Fellow brothers and sisters throughout time, and just it was just packed, and everyone was joyful and happy, and everyone from their moment in time and their moment in history had their city that they helped steward for that moment. Are you with me, church? We're here just passing through for a moment. Some of you will be here for the rest of your life. Some of you maybe just temporarily. Wherever God has you, for the moment that you're there, help steward the purposes of God in your generation. God desires to not see murders, but to see peace, to see unity, to see people coming together, for pockets of poverty to be eradicated, and those that are without hope to give them hope, drugs and alcohol to begin to diminish. God wants to see families made whole. I'll just throw this one out too. And marijuana clinics shut down. It's a scourge in our society. There's a reason they call it dope. It dulls the mind. It stops creativity. Listen, we need to pray that such a revival, listen, the heart has to change. People won't stop with their addictive behaviors until they have an encounter with the living Christ. I'm not saying go picket the marijuana. I'm just saying pray for revival, that people's hearts would be changed to the living one. Instead of looking for love in the wrong places, they look for Him. And all of a sudden these addictive patterns, whether it's drugs or alcohol or pornography or sex or whatever it is, or greed, all of a sudden it's Jesus. God's love and mercy towards our city. You know, every city is unique and has its own personality, just like every person is unique. Just like there are no two of you There are no two cities the same. Each are unique. Now let me just talk a little bit for a moment about motivational gifts on a personal level, but then I want to wrap it into what it means for a city. Do you realize that cities have motivational type tendencies? Let's talk about these. Romans chapter 12, verse 6 through 8. I'm going to read out of the NIV. Paul says we have different gifts according to the grace given to each of us. If your gift is prophesying, then prophesy in accordance with your faith. If it is serving, then serve. If it is teaching, then teach. If it is to encourage, then give encouragement. I love to encourage people. If it is giving, then give generously. If it is to lead, do it diligently. If it is to show mercy, do it cheerfully. See, these are what we typically call the motivational gifts. Often these gifts are God-given, and you can have a combination of these gifts. A motivational gift is the grace of God woven into who we are. Usually a combination for most of us, but our God-given motivation, what we're inclined to do. Some of you are so compassionate and so merciful that your natural tendency is just to have mercy and compassion and to help people. That's a good thing. And if that's your gifting, go with it. Some of you are just natural servants. That's who you are. It's a God-given grace. Go with that. Some of you have strong leadership. Step into the leadership role. Some of you are teachers. Some of you are prophetic or visionary. It all mixes together. Some of you have a heart to give. Then give generously, right? Give and help other people. Help the church. All these kind of things, right? And so these 7 motivational gifts out of Romans 12, 6 through 8, what we often call maybe the perceiver or the prophetic, where we have design, insight, truth, justice, these type of inclinations, honor. We have the server, authority, dominion, platform, faithful, all trying to help others. Teacher, the mentor, trust, responsibility, knowledge, all aspects of it. The exhorter, they encourage, they impart energy, party, sometimes humor with that, right? There's also a fun element of it, maybe a gravity at times. The giver, there's stewardship. They nurture, they're tactile, seasonal, wealth, resources, all these things. The leader, they cast vision, inspire action, they provide direction. The comforter, or the one who shows mercy, shows forgiveness, compassion, empathy, and care. And so it's a whole other teaching to break these down into, and we do that in small group settings here, about these motivational giftings. But I wanted to recap for a moment and now think about a city. You see, God's plan for each city is also unique. Just as He created people with different gifts and potential to bring about the kingdom, He also created each city with its own divine purpose. Now the enemy, Satan, his strategy also knows our weakness, and he attempts to hold us in bondage in those areas of our lives. So in other words, if you are, let's say, someone who shows mercy, for example, and a lot of comfort, the enemy may come at you with some wounding in your life or situation that happens where all of a sudden now you feel hurt, trauma, and if you're not bring it to the cross, now you may tend to hold back, right? Or not release that gift because you don't want to get maybe hurt again. Are you with me? And it can happen with any of these gift mix. And so the enemy sort of knows his strategy, how he comes at us individually, but in like manner, he will come at our cities in this type of way also. So as we understand the enemy's strategies against our cities, we can pray more effectively. Now, a few more scriptures, and I'll be done with scriptures for today. It says that throughout the Bible, we see that cities were often a focal point for God's blessing and at times judgment. Cities like Sodom and Gomorrah, Nineveh, and Babylon, each having the opportunity to repent and receive God's mercy before judgment came. And what's interesting to me, like with Nineveh, they invaded the northern kingdom of Israel around 722 BC. And so it was horrible what they had done and all these type of things. And yet God extended mercy to that nation for 186 years. It's a fascinating story. You remember Jonah and the great fish, right? Well, that whole story is about Nineveh and Jonah not wanting to go to Nineveh to preach a message of hope and repentance because he knew God was a God of mercy. And so Jonah didn't want to go and do that. But from the moment that he finally gets spit up on the shore and he goes to Nineveh and begins to preach, what do the people do? They begin to repent. Openly. I mean, for the very first day. How'd you like to have that kind of revival in Tucson? Where all of a sudden it's like you don't have to convince people that Jesus is amazing and wonderful and He wants to just wrap you in His arms. They're coming to you saying, what do we do? What do we do to get right with God? Nineveh and some of these other cities. Look what Jesus said in Matthew 11:21. Woe to you, Chorazin. Woe to you, Bethsaida. Now this is Jesus. For if the mighty works which were done in you, in other words, the signs, wonders, and miracles, had been done in Tyre and Sidon, they would have repented long ago in sackcloth and ashes. And that's what happened in Nineveh, by the way. So apparently Tyre and Sidon, the Lord knew that they had a propensity to get right with God, but these other cities, yet they had greater miracles, they stayed hard-hearted towards God. But what's God's desire? No matter what city it is, His desire is to bring reconciliation and restoration. But in the end, if humanity refuses to accept God's plan of redemption through Jesus Christ, then the consequences of the sin and the consequences of what happens when we allow the enemy an open door invades a city and a region. And we've all seen examples of that in our time as well as through history. The greatest example of God's love and mercy towards the city is Jerusalem. Throughout the Bible, God's passion for this sacred city is revealed. Carol and I have been to Israel a couple of times and traveled through it, and you sense God's heart for that city, for that place. You sense just His awesome presence, and His eye is still on that place and on the people and how He wants to restore still. Now the prophets not only prophesied about Jerusalem, but they prophesied to Jerusalem. Consider Isaiah 51:17. Awake, awake, stand up, O Jerusalem, you who have drunk at the hand of the Lord. To a city. Psalm 137, verse 5. If I forget you, O Jerusalem, let my right hand forget its skill. Consider what Jesus said in Luke 13:34. Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones God's messengers. How often I have wanted to gather your children together as a hen protects her chicks beneath her wings, but you wouldn't let me. Can you hear the Lord's heart over Tucson? Or whatever city you might be watching from? Oh, Tucson, Tucson, how I've longed to gather you. How I've longed to draw you. See, He's not angry. But He gets right to the heart of the matter. But you wouldn't let me. Maybe you're here today. And you've had your hand at a distance towards God. Maybe you're here because someone's asked you to come and maybe made you come. And He's saying, listen, would you let me in? I just want to draw you near. I want to be that eternal Father. I want to be that one who just nurtures you and draws you near. And He says the same to our city. See, that's what I hear Him speaking over the broken of our city, not judgment. I'm hearing saying, I want to draw you in. Not only did God send prophets to speak to His city, but He also sent those to minister to the physical needs of the city. Consider Ezra rebuilt the temple and Nehemiah rebuilt the wall. You see, it's not enough that we just pray for our city. We also need to ask the Lord, how can I serve in our local churches and how can I serve in this city to help minister to this city? He's asking us to be supernatural in the realm of the Spirit, but also super practical and asking for His help and how can we minister to a city. While Jerusalem is only Jerusalem, Tucson is only Tucson. God loves all cities, but I know beyond a doubt I could share more stories of visionary encounters I've had with the Lord over the years here and His great love for this city. He has a great love for it here and the people. He wants to see the city whole and healthy, and the strategies of Satan dismantled to remove the hindrances to the gospel of Christ and advance His kingdom. Cities are important to God because they contain so many people. And consider this, there are more people alive today. We're somewhere north of 7 billion people on the planet. There are more people alive today than about half of human history. Let that sink in for a minute. It's such a huge mission field. Right now, our moment, our generation, in the midst of all of the stresses our world is experiencing, there are more people alive right now than almost all of history before us. Tell me this is not a time of harvest. It's not a time of an outpouring of God's Spirit and what God wants to do. And the enemy knows that. That's why some of the evil has been so open now. You see, when there's an open heaven over a city, many will come to Christ. God created cities with a purpose and destiny. Each city has a unique purpose or DNA, just like each of us does. I shared a little bit from John Dawson's book, Taking Our Cities for God, last week. He's the former president of Youth with a Mission, author and church leader. And so he says this that I found just really powerful. He said, I believe God intends this city to be a place of shelter, a place of communion, and a place of liberation as its citizens practice a division of labor according to their own unique gifts. I believe our cities have the mark of God's sovereign purpose upon them. Our cities contain what I call a redemptive gift. Now, we typically refer to those gifts in Romans 12 that I read to you earlier as motivational gifts. He refers to them and others as a redemptive gift. Now, redemptive gifts is a study of the gifts listed as I shared in Romans. Studies have been done by Bill Gothard, Doug and Katie Fortin, and another teacher in the body of Christ, Arthur Burke. I'll get to him in a moment. Let me define redemptive. It's an adjective. Redemptive means the acting to save someone from error or evil. An example would be the healing power of redemptive love. When you love someone with no strings attached, unconditionally, there's something healing in that. There's redemption in that. It's redemptive. Here's another example. Alcoholics Anonymous is an example of a redemptive social movement. It seeks to help an alcoholic to stop drinking, which changes their whole life. Now, Arthur Burke said this about these gifts in Romans 12:6-8. He calls them the redemptive gifts. Prophet, servant, teacher, exhorter, giver, ruler, and mercy. He said the gifts tend to shape our personality and the way we may then receive one or more of the manifestation gifts, typically from 1 Corinthians 12. He said this, a redemptive gift is the grace of God woven into who we are. He goes further. The redemptive gifts also fit cities, churches, states, and institutions. The state of Minnesota is redemptive gift of giver, lakes/birthing, he says. USA as a whole is prophet, creativity, design, comes first in culture. The cities of Princeton, Zimmerman, Elk River, I believe are teacher/servant/giver. He goes on to say, any business or church also has a main redemptive gift. Once this is clear, the destiny will be made much more clear. I'll unpack Tucson in a moment. Applying this to cities, Jerusalem was ordained by God to be a city of peace and praise. Instead, has become a place of conflict where God's character is continually being misrepresented through religious controversy. Consider Amsterdam. Ken and I have actually had the opportunity to go to Amsterdam. Centuries of hospitality and tolerance. It's a beautiful city. It's a genuine city of refuge, much like Geneva or the cities of the Levites in the Old Testament. Today, it's known as a city of legal drug sales and use and legal prostitution for many years. It's a perversion of the gift of the city. As I shared earlier, there's a psychological principle that he who gives the greatest hope gains the greatest authority. Politicians use this for elections. However, in love and truth, Christians need to use this principle to help restore individuals in our cities, right? It's God's heart. So, take Amsterdam, for example. So this city that really has a redemptive gift of hospitality, mercy, and compassion, now it's been perverted to go too far, right? And so God's desire then would be to bring that city back out of that, where it would also be known as a city of refuge, safe, right? Where now all of a sudden the perversion is gone. Does this make sense? So let's ask ourselves this question. Why is our city here? And again, if you're watching from another city, ask yourself that question. Is it merely a product of geography and commerce, quoting some from John Dawson's book, Taking Our Cities for God, or does God have a redemptive purpose in mind for it? We must see that Tucson is God's city and that people here are made in His image. Satan is an invader and a usurper operating in our territory. God did not give demons authority over our city. Satan and the demonic realm have infested the earth's atmosphere, but they can only extend their authority into a town or an institution when people sin or agree with his lies. Again, when you look into the history of our cities, we find clues as to what is oppressing the people. Again, this is our planet. God has given us authority over it. And the only authority Satan has is stolen human authority. But that, as I've shared last week and the week before, has been redeemed through what Christ has done on that cross, right? He initially gains this authority when at some point in history human beings believe his lie, receive his accusation, and are seduced into allegiance to his plan. For example, in Tucson, well, I guess there's, nothing we can really do about the gangs and the murders. I guess the drugs and all that's going to happen. I guess human trafficking is going to still happen. So I guess we just have to tolerate it and maybe live in a good part of town and just pray for the best of everything. You see how we can fall into a lie? And this happens in cities all over the place. Instead of saying, wait a minute. God Himself challenges us to pray for the peace of our city, pray for the prosperity, and He wants to back us up. We need to believe that if we pray and then begin to act, God will actually do something. Let me talk about Tucson for a moment. I'm almost done for today. What DNA, what personality, what redemptive gift does Tucson have? When we look at the earliest inhabitants of Tucson, we see that the Native American tribe, the O'odham, lived here. They were hunter-gatherers, as well as the Pima and other Native American tribes, and also farmed along the Santa Cruz River. They called Tucson Sucson, which meant at the foot of Black Mountain, what we typically call a mountain now. They were a peaceful people, gleaning from the land and from the Santa Cruz. In 1690, Jesuit priest Father Kino arrived. And again, by the way, many believe that Tucson is the oldest city in America, older than St. Augustine, Florida. Historians are divided on that. The first European to contact the O'odham. He and other Catholic priests were committed to bringing Christianity to the Native Americans and to win them to Christ. Later in 1775, a site near Sucson was chosen for the Tucson Presidio. 1821, Mexico gains independence from Spain, and in 1854, with the Gadsden Purchase, Tucson becomes an American city. 1860 through the 1880s, frequent bloody confrontations with the Native American, the Apaches, occurred in this area. In 1880, the railroad comes, and everything then begins to change once the railroad got here. So Tucson was originally a peaceful community that was family-minded, serving one another and prosperous. They were nurtured by the river. Remember, the Santa Cruz River used to run above ground here. Nurtured by the river and the land. Christian influence from the beginning as Europeans arrived. What's happened? We went from a place of peace to murder. Went from a place of family and community to individualism and independence. From fruitfulness and prosperity to greed, plunder, and barrenness. From Christian evangelism with those early Jesuit priests coming into here to all of a sudden religious formalism. Interesting, this city's had some of the most major miracle movements in church history right in this city and right in this region. Yet there's a religious formalism that rests on our city. It's also been known as a place of rest and healing, but now it seems there's more fatigue and sickness. Once a lush river, now we have dry washes. This wasn't God's plan. I'm going to take it a step further. I believe Tucson was called to be a forerunner city. Arthur Burke believes that over the state of Arizona, its redemptive gift is that of prophet. I believe that's true. There's a revelatory realm that seems over this state, not all good, by the way. But I believe in the Christian realm, it's certainly there. And I believe that Tucson, by virtue of the fact that those Jesuit priests first came into this area, following the river up from the south, from Mexico, Hermosillo, Do you realize that the King's Highway went from Tucson into California, and much of those early settlements and Catholic missions were from the Jesuits and the Catholics and the Spaniards that went through this area on over to California? It was called the King's Highway. In fact, many historians believe that on up into San Francisco, it was because of what came through Tucson. I submit to you, Tucson has a forerunner anointing. Tucson is a gateway city. That's what it is. Yet the enemy is perverting it. What do we got going through our gateway now? Human trafficking, drugs. Pray for our Border Patrol. Pray. Pray our government would get a handle on this. Right? It's not God's plan. Do we care about the refugee? Absolutely, right? But the enemy is perverted. That's what I want us to see. This place of family now has become a place of disjointed family. It's all over our nation. It's 25% of our kids in America are being raised by single mom. If you're a single mom here, we love you. We want to help you. I was raised by a single mom. And in our city, I've married couples that have 2, 3 kids already. They're living together. They're not married. Family's not at the forefront. We got to pray that would change. That was not how this city first was founded. Would you go ahead and stand? Pastor, I'm struggling just to make it myself. You're asking me to carry the burdens of the city. No. I'm asking you to keep your eyes on Jesus and get His heart for our city. Amen. And as you begin to pray for your family and your own situation, and you pray for this city, you'll begin to see things start turning around in your own life too. Father, I pray right now over this church and over the churches of our city in this valley, that you would renew and revive a love for this city, a heart for this city, a desire to see this city be an oasis. I believe, Lord, that you have decreed over this city that it would be an oasis once again. That it would be a place of spiritual refuge where the sick can come and find healing, where those who are weary can come and find rest, where those who need peace can find peace, where lawlessness would be broken, God, individualism would be broken, and all of a sudden, family and community once again would be at the heartbeat of what we do. And God, when that happens, all of the orphans out there that are involved in all time, Lord, all of a sudden, wholeness will begin to come. And so, God, I'm asking right now, God, for a special grace on your church, God. And lift the weariness off, Lord, that we could see and pray by the power of the Spirit, God. Not in our human energy, because our human energy will fail. But Holy Spirit, I'm asking by your grace to take us beyond where we're at. In Jesus' name. Daniel in Daniel 9, I don't have time to get into it, but he realized the time of the 70 years of captivity were up. And Daniel begins to pray. Go read Daniel 9 sometime this week. He begins to pray in Babylon for the city and for the release of his people. And look what God did. He brought restoration and brought them back home. It's time, church, for restoration. The prodigals to come home and cities to be restored. Do you agree? Amen. Amen.